There is no question, Vokey wedges are the most popular choice on tour, and that's for good reason. But why do some of the best players in the world choose to use, well, older models? It's because they are aware of three simple truths that build a phenomenal wedge game, and why you will see some pros not upgrade to the brand new SM10 in 2024. So let me show you how you can use the same simple knowledge to upgrade your wedges on a budget this year, and shed some light on the truths that surround clubs, equipment and technique, so maybe we don't all get sucked into the SM10 2024 Vokey hype that we're going to see this year. Putting hype to one side, we can't deny the dominating power of Bob Vokey and his wedges over the years and the multiple tournament wins that came with them. That being said, there's one massive advantage of a new release of a Titleist Vokey wedge, and that's the fact so many golf shops up and down the country across the world have a load of SM9 wedges in their shop that they were using to fit with, and in the imminent future no longer will have any use for them. So to prove a point and put my money where my mouth is, I decided to put that to the test and see if I could find an SM9 wedge for pretty good value. And it wasn't long into my hunt that I found last year's esteemed SM9 Vokey wedge for a very good price, and it was pretty local to me as well. The first simple truth of wedges is that condition arguably plays more of a part in performance compared to any other golf club in our game. For example, I'd rather play a brand new SM6 Vokey wedge than, let's say, a burnt out, torn up, dented SM9. However, considering the vast majority of wedge fittings are taken place off a mat in a studio or a driving range, the likelihood of a lot of these ex-demo wedges being in good condition is quite high. So I quickly headed down to Newbury & Crookham Golf Club to make sure that hopefully one of these SM9 wedges was still there, and to my surprise, quite a few of them, if not all of them, were still there. This 50-degree Vokey wedge, apart from the remnants of an old fitting where the layer of the ball's basically been taken off, this thing was in exceptionally good condition, and I was very excited to get a hold of this for £60 just to prove to you guys this bi-yearly occurrence when a new Vokey wedge hits the market means a great opportunity for a lot of you out there. All right, time to bring this thing back to life, give it a bit of a clean up. Have a look at this beauty. £60. I could play with this for a year and get my money virtually back. Before I go into the other three key steps, I do want to show you some price listings of SM7s, SM8s, SM9s. These all vary from about £50 to about £90 depending on condition. All I'm saying is after watching this video, you could potentially get a great set of wedges, probably three of them, for virtually the same price that a brand new SM10 wedge is probably going to cost you. Let's talk equipment and why there's one aspect of our equipment that we very much overlook when we're trying to get that much needed spin well around the green. When researching for this video, I came across Billy Horschel and Bob Vokey talking about the SM10, and it's a great watch. It's more about their feelings, thoughts about wedges, opposed to the brand new SM10 anyway. One of the biggest takeaways I took from that whole video is how much both of them talked about sound, feel, and what kind of confidence that particular wedge in that situation actually gives them. But I want to build on that, because not only is there two components for sound and feel, there's two components for sound, feel and well spin. One of them being this very cheap Cleveland wedge that's been basically worn down to 1 inch of its life, and the other very overlooked component in our game, well, the ball that we actually use to play it. Now, there's a reason I'm going to be using this very old, burnt out, cheap Cleveland 56-degree wedge. Number one, to highlight how much spin. Well, let's be honest, what a very cheap wedge is actually able to produce. I mean, that's outrageous. And number two, there's a slightly cheaper alternative to get more spin around the green that doesn't include a new wedge set. But please don't fall into the stereotypical trap of getting a more premium golf ball because you think it's going to help your game. Quickly, 3 shots with each ball to prove a point. Point 1, technique is everything, as that dispersion is horrendous from 35 yards. Point 2, the softest balls, or what feels soft, don't spin as much around the green. Pro Plus feels hardest out of the bunch, just like every other premium ball, yet you can distinctively see from the same yardage a lot more control. And number 3, traditionally cheaper, more affordable balls like your Switzerland Soft Feel, Titleist Tour Soft, or even these Vice Drive or Vice Tour balls feel softer because that gives us confidence. And if you like the feel and sound of a golf ball that you're playing with, I highly rate that above any launch and spin numbers for a mid to high handicapper. There's also one underlying factor that I haven't mentioned with these 3 balls, and obviously I'm going to now use my nice new wedge with them. And that's at higher speeds, especially over 100 yards, they all have stopping power with the right technique. But as I've shown, both of these wedges here are able to produce over 10,000 RPM. And realistically, if you want more control around the greens, i.e. more spin from those short shots, more premium ball obviously will help with that. However, let me show you who it definitely won't help. Does your current wedge in your bag look something similar like this? There's 2 reasons why that probably isn't the case. Number 1, you don't practice as much as Tiger did with this wedge. And number 2, your technique doesn't allow it. Billy Horschel again discussed 2 great points in the video with Bob Vokey. Number 1, both of them talked about the first 5 grooves being the contact point with the ball. This gives the most compression and the most spin from whatever wedge that you're currently using. Notice how mine is way too high, and obviously that's why I'm not a great wedge player. And number 2, they discussed launch angle and his thoughts on launch angle when it comes to static loft and then obviously dynamic loft. Let's start with the wedge technique that doesn't work, and this player that I'm trying to stop buying a brand new SM10. Someone that gets very steep, comes very across the ball. Both of these swings are going to be the same club head speed. Okay, maybe we don't shank it, maybe not that bad. Oh, that's better. Notice my efficiency at 80 miles an hour. This is really important. I got less ball speed from the club head speed that I provided because I hit it so high toe up here. The ball launched very high, so I know that wedge was actually pointing up to the sky. So the ball was spending more time, well, doing this opposed to obviously doing that. And that's all because we came very much across the ball. Whether it's expensive wedge or a cheap wedge, it's really important to know this. A player that comes across the golf ball, especially with their wedges, has 2 options. Number 1, close the face load so it starts enough left to come back in. But as you can see, I'm virtually taking all the bounce off, hence why they come down into the ball, potentially put it even further back in their stance, and then get a massive divot and realistically not that much consistency. Number 2, they don't want to make that big divot, so they come down into the ball, and the other way they close the club face is by, well, doing this. Therefore, by casting the club and obviously closing it on the way down, essentially the face does this, which means the ball has nothing to really grip against. Opposed to someone that now comes more from the inside with a pretty bowed left wrist, meaning that they can then have a lot of, well, forward lean into the ball. I know that's somewhat exaggerated. Oh, 81 miles an hour on the dot. Because I came more neutral or more on the inside, I was then allowed to have more forward lean and still get it to go straight towards the target, opposed to if I was out in, more forward lean would have, well, caused, well, a shot to go very much out here. And more importantly, look at my efficiency. I got so much more ball speed, 78 miles an hour with the old technique, 91 miles an hour with that one. That's equipment and technique in part. However, one of the biggest myths in wedge game is you wanting to hit the ball first, then the turf. And that's just not the case. We actually want to hit the ground. Let me explain. As I said earlier, we want to hit the ground first, not the ball. We effectively want to hit the ground with this part of the club. But as I explained, not all of us can do that right now, as we love coming this way and, well, digging that leading edge. KDM. They're the letters you want to know if you're a player that lives in a country that's very wet, very soft, and, well, you have a swing that does a bit of, well, that. And for you lucky few that live in a country where it's firm ground and obviously sunny weather, you don't need that much bounce. Notice how this F grind basically just blends into the floor here. And it means if you come down and you obviously slap the bounce into the ground and you catch it a tiny bit heavy, well, you're not going to thin it out the back.
opposed to, well, something a bit more chunky. Not to mention those grinds such as STF, they're going to be good for that player that's a bit more shallow, not coming this way, very much cutting the top of the grass. Again, Billy Horschel made a great point in his video. The more loft, the less compromise. I showed you earlier, by adding dynamic loft, you're getting zero compression. You're getting less ball speed from the club head speed. Therefore, unless you need a 62 or need a 60 to get out of a bunker, realistically, I would always gap from this wedge, your A wedge, your pitching wedge, your sand wedge in your set. How far does this go full swing? And then find a loft that goes there. If you don't know your distances, I would say a minimum of 50 degree, potentially a 48. And realistically, for those mid to high handicappers, 2 of these wedges is more than enough until you get your technique down. If grooves haven't got any better due to legality, sound and feel are one of the biggest components pros use to gain confidence in their short game, and arguably technique is the biggest component when it comes to gapping and spin and launch. It's no wonder some of the best in the world are still using some of Bob Vokey's amazing design over the years, and if it's good enough for them, it's potentially good enough for you. But if you're now wondering, Simon, what about irons? I'm a mid-handicapper looking to upgrade to get the same kind of sound and feel to blend into my new wedges. This video up here on the right-hand side. Catch you guys later.